Hello, it's Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, and today, for the very first interview in 2021, we have Weiting Chen, one of the key members of Perpetual Protocol, and in fact, he is the growth manager of Perpetual Protocol. Thank you for being here to speak with us.
Excited to be here.
Likewise, mate. Now, for all those wondering, this is entirely free. There is no compensation in any way, and I'm not invested in Perpetual Protocol. Could be my mistake, and let's find out exactly what they're all about. Now, Weiting, once again, thank you for your time. I wanted to start with some of the basics. Obviously, you're quite new. The protocol has recently launched. Tell us a bit more about what it stands for. What is Perpetual Protocol in a nutshell?
Sounds good. Perpetual Protocol is a decentralized perpetual contract protocol for every asset. It's similar to Uniswap, but for derivatives called perpetual contracts. People could think about it as Uniswap meets BMax. So people could go to our site and connect with your wallet. And after that, you could open a long or short position with up to 16x leverage. Right now, we support Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Wi-Fi. And soon after the call, we'll launch a Polkadot perpetual contract. So, and right now we launch nearly after a month, and we are generated over 50 million US dollar trading volume per day.
Okay, I want to stop you there for a moment because I did look at the volume. It was outstanding comparatively to other launches of this nature of something that's similar to your protocol. Now, firstly, you must be very happy with that, but you also mentioned in that discussion or that reference several other startups, platforms more importantly. So are you agnostic? And do you want to talk a bit more about that volume and what it means for you with real traction and real utility?
Sounds good. I think one of the differentiator we have is we are platform agnostic. By being platform agnostic, I mean that if an asset has a price fee on chain, we can use that asset as an underlying asset to create perpetual contract. So the reason why we could do it is we created a new technology called the Virtual AMM. So traditionally, for an automatic market maker to work, you need to have a liquidity provider to provide two kind of real asset inside an automatic market maker. And on the other side, we have traders could use one asset to trade and get another asset, right? So right. This is how traditionally the automatic market maker works. But in our case, the reason why it's called Virtual AMM is there is no real asset stored inside the Virtual AMM. Because when we launch a new market, let's say we will launch a Polkadot or perpetual contract market soon after the call, then when we create this market, we just set up the two numbers inside the Virtual AMM. And then user could just trade with virtual number. Then, by doing this, we don't need to have,
the real asset.
People could essentially trade with anything with price fee on chain. So that's the thing we are doing right now.
And okay, so just on that note, so just to recap that, having that virtual sort of approach with not having a virtualized asset or digital asset as opposed to a real one, what's the key benefit in terms of the actual protocol? Is it that it's more seamless? Is it faster? Is it more easy to execute? Because obviously the other ones do have the AMM and they have the real asset in place, but you virtualized it.
Well, the main benefit is we can support any asset with price fee on chain. Let me just try to describe the step-by-step how this virtual AMM works. So when we launch a new market, we need to set up two virtual assets inside the virtual AMM. For instance, let's say if Bitcoin's price is 40K right now, 40,000 USDC per Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. When we launch a Bitcoin perpetual market, what we're going to do is we will put the different number of assets inside the virtual AMM. In the case of Bitcoin perpetual contract, we just type there will be 100 BTC, virtual BTC perpetual contract inside the virtual AMM. On the other hand, we have 4 million virtual USDC inside the virtual AMM. So by doing this, we just created asset virtually. And whoever user want to trade with the virtual AMM, what they need to do is they got to deposit the collateral, which is a real asset, into the vault. Right. And then the vault will apply the leverage and the duration and then put the number into the virtual AMM. So let's say right now, today we have Alice, the trader. She wants to open a long position on Bitcoin with 100 USDC as collateral with 10x leverage. So what she is going to do is she will deposit 100 USDC into the vault, and the vault will apply 10x leverage and put that inside the virtual AM. So in this case, the vault will put 1,000 virtual USDC into the virtual AM. Right. And then we use the X multiplied by Y equal to K formula to determine the price. So in this case, the amount of the virtual USDC increase in virtual AM. On the other hand, the virtual BTC decrease. And the difference is how much virtual BTC Alice gets. So that's how we apply the virtual concept into the AM. And some people might be wondering, well, it sounds like, but what will happen if a lot of users just open a long position? Who will lose money, right? Like for instance, after Alice, we have Bob. He also opened a long position, and who exactly will lose money? So after Alice, we have Bob, who also opened a long position with 100 USDC as collateral and 10x leverage. Then then the amount of virtual USDC increase in virtual AM, the amount of the virtual BTC decrease in the virtual AM, and the difference is received by Bob. And then what will happen is if Alice closed her position, the VUSDC actually decrease because when she closed her position, she can get some from the virtual USDC. And then after Alice closed her position, Bob closed her position, the states of the virtual AM back to normal. And in this case, because so the sequence is like this: Alice opened long, Bob opened long, and then Alice closed her position, and Bob closed his position. So the price of the virtual BTC in the virtual AM actually increased after Alice, after Bob. So in this case, Alice actually is the one profited from this trade, this sequence of trade, because Bob increased the price of the virtual AM. So once Alice closed her position, once Alice closed the position, then Bob wants to close his position. He actually lose money. So virtual AM is kind of a way to lay people to trade against each other, but in a disguise of the AM.
I see. And what's interesting also, you do have that step with the vault. So obviously you're doing this to make sure that there is, I guess, a more sophisticated trade happening, but also that no one loses out with subsequent trading with the way that the vAMM is set up. Having no third parties, one of the big words that come out in the literature for Perpetual Protocol is decentralized. So in the context of the vAMM and in context of what you stand for as, I guess, an up-and-coming protocol for trading, and you've created so much volume, why is decentralized so integral and so fundamental to your design? Well, in the context of DeFi especially.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the founders of our protocols, as a participant of this DeFi ecosystem, right, we could actually see the progress of the trading assets. For instance, back in 2020, we could see the rise of the DEXs, the kind of democratization of the spot trading. We could see the likes of Uniswap, Curve Finance, those kind of spot trading, the democratization, the spot trading. And then we see Compound, Aave, they democratize the borrowing and lending. And then we later see DYDX and BZX, they democratize margin trading. So because we see the gradual progression as well as sophistication of the asset being traded, that's why around 1 year ago, the founder of the Perpetual Protocol think that, hey, maybe we try to democratize derivative. Among all the derivative being traded in the crypto space, perpetual contract is actually one of the most traded assets in this space. There are trillions of volume generated in this space.
I was surprised actually how quickly that happened. Within I think a few weeks of launching, the volume just exceeded, I would imagine, all expectations because you were in the top 10.
Yeah, kind of. Well, because I think the main reason, I believe there are two main reasons. The first one is the user experience, because the whole thing actually exists on xDai chain, which is another chain besides Ethereum, but Ethereum compatible. But when you go to our exchange, you actually don't know that it's happening at xDai chain. And the user experience so great that some of the users just find out later and they are blown away. Besides that, because the thing is, our smart contracts are xDai chain, so the block time is like 5 seconds. So it's much better.
And I did want to talk to you about that because obviously the underlying asset for the entire Ethereum ecosystem is ETH. We know that the technology is there. We know the devs, the majority of devs even today are still within that Ethereum ecosystem. But the xDai component, that extra layer of I guess, expediting the process, making sure that the technology was keeping up to the needs of Perpetual Protocol. I really wanted to touch on that more and understand why exactly did you choose xDai? What was the nature of creating that sort of partnership among many that you've developed so far?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the reason why we chose xDai is when I don't think we have talked about this before. So back in last year, September last year, we are 2 days away from the official launch on Ethereum. And at that time, the ETH price was around 400 to 500. And after some calculation, we found out that when a user wants to open a position, he or she needs to pay up to $200 worth of ETH. So in this
gas fees.
Yeah, it's just for gas fee. And so no one is going to trade it on Ethereum like that. So despite they were only 2 days away from releasing, we was like, no, we cannot really release it because no one going to trade it.
Right.
That's why we wrote a Medium post to tell the community to say, hey, we are not going to do it because no one going to trade this. And at that time, we go through a lot of second layer solutions and the side chains or other chains. And there are around 3 criteria that we determine that they need to certify the scaling solution, need to certify those 3 criteria. So we could need to certify those 3 criteria for us to pick it. The first one is go-to-market speed, because we are not the only players in this space. So for us to compete with those players, we need to go to market fast. So the first thing is you need to be production ready. And at that time, there are a lot of scalar solution hasn't been launched yet.
Exactly, because all went ready.
Yep, exactly. So this criteria alone, we have just filtered a lot of players. And the second one is that means the scaling solution needs to be EVM compatible, because like ZK rollup is literally written in completely different language. Then in our case, we need to rewrite the whole Solidity into.
So you didn't have time for that kind of thing. You needed something that would work now.
Exactly, and not to mention that if a thing is written in new language, it's more bug prone. I.e., we could lose money if there's a hacker just exploit some unknown things we don't know existing on an entire different code. And the third thing is the third thing is
that's okay.
I kind of forgot.
That's okay, but it's really great though that what I'm hearing from you is that you took the time, your whole team took the time to make sure that it was going to be the right match, to make sure that scaling solution, or that layer 2 rather, was going to work seamlessly and work efficiently when you made that entry. And I think for anyone listening, that's exactly what we want to hear. We don't want to hear that you just grabbed any solution that was, a partner, in the narrative, or a partner in the ecosystem just because. So it gives us confidence, I think, to hear that.
Yeah, and so those criteria alone, we filter out most of the scaling solution besides xDai and Matic. But our team members are more familiar with xDai. That's why we took the leap. And so far, we are quite pleasant. We are quite happy with how we have been achieved, because right now, xDai, the gas fee is so low that we just pay for all of our traders. I think the number is like right now we have hundreds of thousands of trade on our platform, and we pay like 100 USDC worth of gas fee on xDai. So that's how low the gas price is on xDai chain.
So that must be the reason why you've attracted so many, because of the price point. It's simply cheaper. Would that be a fair analysis? Is that's the reason for the mass arrival?
Yeah, exactly. Users? Yeah, not to mention ETH is it went from $300 per ETH right now to like $1,200 per ETH. So that's definitely one of the contributor of the growth. But I want to emphasize that despite right now we are choosing xDai as a scaling solution, but the whole thing could migrate to other scaling solution once those kind of solutions are mature. So.
And I really appreciate that. Again, I'm also agnostically positioned in the space. I've always been transparent about that. I'm not an ETH maxi. I'm not a Polkadot maxi. I am a tech maxi and I am team maxi. And in this instance, it gives us more confidence as well, because what you're saying here, Weiting, is that you will, as a team, move where the technology goes, where the best and most optimal technology and offerings and scaling solutions come about. You will move in that direction. So that, again, I think for anyone listening, it gives us reassurance that you're not biased to specifics, or you're not biased to specific platforms or technologies, which we do see in the space, actually. So that's great to hear. Now, with regard to the token itself, I wanted to discuss that more. I know a lot of people don't like talking about this in teams, but we need to, in terms of utility, understand things like the staking aspect, really understand the dynamic. How does the Perp token fit in to make sure that there is a real value had, not just simply a speculative token?
For sure. So there are two main utilities of our Perp token. The first one is governance. So maybe I should go with the second one. The second one is staking. So people could stake their Perp on the protocol, and in return, they could get staking reward in Perp and a cut on transaction fee in USDC. So that's the staking part. And back to the first part. So if you are a staker who lock up their token on the protocol, you could use the stake Perp to vote on important issues. So right now we allow people to use their Perp token to vote on the next market to be listed on the platform. So those are the two main utilities we provided right now. And sometimes the system actually lose money. For instance, because the system use the derivative that's traded on protocol is perpetual contract, right? So sometimes when the price is really volatile, there might be liquidation happens. And if the protocol fail to liquidate a position, there will be a bad debt, which is a loss to essentially is a loss to the system. So in this case, we will use the insurance fund to pay for loss first. So yeah.
And let's talk about that. So let's talk about that, because I noticed in the literature, once again, you have aligned with Nexus as well, Nexus Mutual, and also there's another insurance-related startup.
Cover protocol, yep.
Exactly. So that must also, once again, give some reassurance to those users, not the speculators here, because you need to have that insurance infrastructure to support this kind of derivative market.
Yeah, exactly. But there are actually two different aspects of the problem we try to solve. So for the insurance or the coverage on Cover Protocol and Nexus Mutual, what we are trying to protect user is from the bugs, the potential bug that we have from our smart contract. So as a user, you could buy coverage from Cover Protocol or Nexus Mutual against potential bugs happening on our protocol. And on the other hand, sometimes the system might lose money due to fail to liquidate a position in time, or sometimes the virtual AMM need to pay the funding payment to the user. So in the later case, it will be from the insurance fund. So insurance fund, whenever you trade our protocol, there will be a 0.1% transaction fee, and half will go to the insurance fund, and another half will go to a transaction pool, which is shared by the stakers. So the purpose of the insurance fund is, on our protocol is, sometimes if we fail to liquidate a position that is under collateral, then the loss to the system will be paid from the insurance fund. And on the flip side, sometimes the virtual AMM need to pay the funding payment to the traders. So that in this case, it will also come from the insurance fund. But that begs the question, what will happen if the insurance fund is depleted?
Exactly.
Right?
And we've seen risks of that in the past, not with you, but other teams.
So in our case, we will mint new perps and sell it on the open market to repair the loss. It's similar to MakerDAO system. So that's why we have a staking mechanism on the platform, because we want to lock up the traders, perp tokens holding perp on the system. So whenever we want to mint perp, there will be enough demand to offset the loss.
I see.
So let's
got it. Now, obviously, the key words there are staking and governance. I would assume you're a natural governance token as well by design because of that. You mentioned the rewards are built in. That incentivizes the staker. The voting really is where the account for the governance really happens, and then there's a democracy built in. But recently, I did want to ask you, Andre Cronje, he tweeted out his concerns in one of his rants through his blog about governance itself. And he often does this in different moments throughout building his own startup and creating his own ecosystem with the mergers that are coming. But he was frustrated with governance itself. And I wanted to get your point on this because you're in a situation in Singapore where you're in a progressive region of the world in terms of registration. You're not in the US, which would be a nightmare in and of itself, I would imagine. So are you confident that you are, through regulation, that you're going to meet all the criteria for most of the world to be a true and tried governance token and be deemed a non-security, for example? Because we've seen also the likes of XRP come out with all of the challenges they had, which is totally different, but we still want to make sure that the utility is built into that governance and there's real voting that's happening and it's meaningful beyond just the staking.
Yep, we totally agree with that. So, but the one thing I want to emphasize is decentralization isn't really achieved in one day, right? So as we can see, Compound, they didn't really have a lot of decentralization things built in. So right now, Compound is actually our benchmark for decentralization because right now, for Compound holders, they could actually vote on the proposal. And once the proposal is passed, the code will automatically be implemented on chain. So that's the benchmark to us, the benchmark of the angle. So right now, what we have is people could vote on the market to be listed, but in the future, we will just try to modularize the whole smart contract to be more like Compound. So that's the first thing. Actually, we have a roadmap to decentralization lineup, and because we just launched in 1 month, so really we cannot achieve like kind of label. So, but right now, currently, people could vote on a new market to be listed. Besides that, as a team, we, there are a lot of regulation regarding to the derivative trading in the world there for each country, right? So right now, Perp exchange is the main venue to trade on the protocol. But as a team that develop a protocol, we still need to respect local laws. That's why for certain jurisdictions such as US, you cannot really access to Perp exchange, which is a website built by us. So, but we believe in the future, or when the protocol is more mature and there are a lot of new things building on top of it, I think in the future people might be easier to access to the protocol with third parties user interface in the future.
I agree. And I've already noticed you have a lot of support within the Ethereum ecosystem, a lot of potential partnerships, I would imagine. So we will talk about that, I hope, later. But I wanted to get a little bit more in depth with regard to some of the key features as well. They are listed all in your website with regard to what you offer as a protocol. Things like, for example, there's zero impermanent loss references. There's settlement is in USDC. And there's a lot of other features that come in. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the features you think matters when it comes to doing that contrastive and comparative analysis of others? So we really know that you're offering more perhaps than what we've seen in the past.
Sounds great. Let me get started with impermanent loss, because right now on the market, there are different kinds of perpetual protocols, different kind of protocols that offer perpetual tradings. And some of them use liquidity provider to provide the assets that a trader need in order to trade with leverages. So in this case, for instance, I don't really want to name some protocols.
That's okay. You don't have to name them or shame them. But certainly you can just allude to some of the technology that they offer.
Yeah, for sure. So for certain protocols that use liquidity provider on the left-hand side and trader on the right-hand side, for those kind of protocol, they rely on the liquidity provider to provide the leverage that trader needs to trade on the protocol, right? And in this case, the liquidity provider, sometimes they get hurt because there might be demand for more for one asset and less demand for another asset.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, the amount of the liquidity provider on the protocol actually is the cap of how much trading volume a protocol could generate it. But in our case, because there's no liquidity provider on the protocol, people just go to our protocol and deposit the collateral and then put that inside the virtual AMM.
So that's how you mitigate all that risk, because you don't have that liquidity provider. You just go straight to the protocol, process the vaults. Okay.
Yeah, and the liquidity essentially is provided by the virtual AMM, because when we launch the virtual AMM or the perpetual market, we just set the number inside the virtual AMM. Yeah. So in a sense that we could actually, because the number are set, they are not real assets stored in the virtual AMM, right? So what we can do is we can dynamically increase the slippage. So this is a long-term goal, but we believe that in the future, as more open interest there are in the protocol, we could actually increase the slippage. So when there are more people trading on protocol, the slippage actually become less. Yes. So because the liquidity we just dynamically set. So this is one of the killer feature we think we have.
Yeah, so actually I noticed that also is one of the listed. So you mentioned the lower slippage over time. And there's also things like you can go long or short with any asset. I think you've referenced that before. But then you also have the capacity to do that leverage. Not this, the crazy leverages we've seen in the past, but certainly 10x leverage, things like that. And there's a quick step process for simply using the facilities and using the exchange. So do you want to just touch on that? If I was a user, why would I choose, so for example, the platform that you created as well?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to highlight the point that the protocol could support any asset because it's virtual AMM. So, the number put inside the virtual AMM, just two numbers and for whatever assets. So for instance, the protocol could support gold, silver, Forex,
anything,
anything, literally anything with a price fee on chain. So people just deposit their USDC and the vault will apply the leverage direction and put inside the virtual AMM. And the moment that we need to use the outside price fee is during the funding time. So for instance, right now, if there are a lot of demand, there are a lot of long position on a virtual AMM, so the price of the virtual AMM just increased a lot, right? However, if the market price of the asset on the outside will just is lower than the market price we have on our markets, right? What we're going to do is we will just deduct the margin of the long position holders to the short position holders. By doing this, we could just compensate the short holders because there are more demands on our platform, right? So by doing this, we could just allow the long position holders to pay the short position holders. By doing that, short position holder could benefit from the disparity between the price.
Right, it also creates some sort of equalization as well in that process. It brings it up as you mentioned. Now, in that context, perfect segue to discuss oracles and Chainlink specifically, because this adds another layer of security, adds another layer of, I guess, making sure that those on to off-chain, or rather off-chain, on-chain price feeds are secure, but also fast. And you mentioned xDai in the way that you use the scaling. This is another reason I would imagine you partner with Chainlink. Do you want to touch on that a bit in the context of what we're discussing here with the key feature?
For sure, because right now our system requires price fee from outside world once per hour, and for the funding payment. So let me just do another recap of the funding payment, just in case people didn't get it. Sure. Let's say if right now we have Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin market price in the outside world is 40,000 USDC per Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. But what if there are a lot of people just open long position on our markets and then push the price to 41,000 USDC per Bitcoin? In this case, because the outside world is the market price of our exchange is higher than outside world, So once per hour, we'll just ask the long position holders to pay the short position holders on our exchange. By doing this, we could encourage people to close the position, which essentially reduce the differences between our exchange and the outside world. So this is called the funding payments. And right now, it happens once per hour, and we use Chainlink's price fee to let the system know the price fee from the outside world. And
how's that going? How's that going from experience so far on the protocol? Is it working effectively? Have you had any hiccups?
Yeah, it's working perfectly. And the exciting thing is because Chainlink, they are also trying to be blockchain agnostic, and we are going to integrate with their native xDai price fee in the future, hopefully in the following months. And as I think the number two really to see how well the system work is to see how many bad debt we have our system, because as I just mentioned, if the system fail to liquidate a position,
if it fails, okay, sure, go ahead.
Yep. So the reason why I choose Chainlink is it's one of the better tested Oracle on the market, right? Because they have survived the BZX exploits and they have been around the market for so long.
And they were one of the first, if not the first, to really showcase the need for oracles. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the reason why we chose Chainlink. And so far, besides using Chainlink, the system actually use time-weighted average price to calculate the price for liquidation. So in order, if you really want to manipulate the price to let us maliciously liquidate some position, you need to just use a lot of money to maintain the high price in order to affect
and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Sorry to interrupt, but this relates back to the Black Thursdays, and those events we've seen where there have been a lot of problems. We saw even the likes of BitMEX, for example, when it went down and the whole infrastructure crumbled because of Oracle issues, arguably. So have you made sure you've set things in to the system so that you don't have those cascading events where suddenly you have these mass liquidations?
Yeah, exactly. So there are I think there are two layers of safety here in regard to Chainlink, to the Oracle. The first one is because right now the whole system, the smart contracts are actually on xDai. So you cannot really use Flashdome to manipulate the price on our smart contract, because in order to deposit to xDai, you need to send the fund to a bridge operated by xDai, then the xDai chain will just mint new USDC. So you cannot really use Flashdome for that. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, we use time-weighted average price to calculate liquidation price. So that's why if you really want to manipulate the price on our protocol, you need to just use a lot of real money to manipulate the price.
People don't want to do that.
Yeah, just too costly.
Got it. Okay, well, so it seems like with regard to the developments or the key features you built in, they are substantial and they are specific to your protocol. Now, with regard to devs, I want to talk about that because without any team to start, there is no code that follows. Without the code, there's no subsequent GitHub developments. If I wanted to go and check deeply into the developments of the infrastructure that does really offer everything in terms of products, would I be able to do that? Would I be able to transparently see, or is that all closed?
Yeah, right now for the smart contract I use on our exchange is for the protocol is all open source. So anyone with knowledge of Solidity could check it. And right now we also offer up to offer bug bounty program with up to 10% of the asset locked inside the smart contract as a reward. So if you are bug hunting master, you could just check out smart contract, check out GitHub repo and see if you find any bug, and you will be well paid for reward.
Got it. I actually saw some of the blogs that were posted on your site, so I'll put them in the links below for anyone who is a dev and wants to go and do some of that bounty hunting or bug hunting rather for the bounty. Now let's move on a little bit to some discussions about how you launched, because you launched in December 14 successfully. Very successfully, actually. A lot of hype happened. You also had a mining proposal structure in that time for rewards. Can you just talk to us about that, how it went? Is it now concluded since you've done that launch?
Actually, we have a project or incentive called trade mining or transaction mining, and which isn't launched yet. So
right, my apologies. So right now, I read that it was happening, so I assumed it already did.
No, but it's really nice to bring up. So basically, for the trade mining is essentially people could trade here, and we will just rebate the transaction fee in the form of perp. Let's say if you're trading here and generated you generate 1,000 USDC worth of trading volume. And right now, because the transaction fee is 0.1%, that means that you need to pay 1 USDC as the transaction fee, right? And for the upcoming transaction mining, we will actually rebate you with the equivalent amount of perp in return. So in this case, you'll get 1 USDC worth of perp in return. So in this case, you actually trade for free. So that's why we want to launch in the following months and want to encourage people to try out the platform. And besides incentivize people to trade over here, we want to hope that the perp token will actually belongs to the users, because it's important for us to let the users hold the token, because they're going to help us to shape the future of the protocol. So that's why that's been essential for us to really incentivize users and also give the tokens to the right users.
Well, it's interesting because already you have such an immense volume, and not given that you haven't started long ago. And if this does work out successfully with the transaction mining proposal, and you do attract and garner a lot more support, surely that's also related to the cost. If it's free, essentially, with the way it's designed, I would imagine you can have a huge influx of users come in because, again, that price point. So good luck on that. I'm going to be watching. We can catch up, hopefully discuss the success of that program. Do you think it's going to be short-term initially, or will that roll out if it's successful?
So I think right now we will roll gradually, and the first one will be 2-week trial period, and we will see how well it goes. And if it goes really well, then we could just extend it, because we want to really iterate. We don't want to say, hey, in the following year you could do something. So that's why we want to just step by step.
Got it. I really appreciate that approach. Now, another thing that's interesting is the team. Decentralized, just like a protocol, or representatives from the team all around the world. Do you want from Asia, North America, the EU? How confident are you in your team? And can you tell us, if you are, why are you confident in your team?
Well, so right now most of team members are distributed in Taiwan, Australia, and US. And the reason why I'm quite confident is a lot of team members have been in this space for a lot of times. For me alone, I've been working in this space for more than 4 years now. And I working for a Bitcoin debit company and then a centralized exchange. And for the founders, Yan Wen, he invented the Virtual AMM, and he is also a serial entrepreneur. So overall, I'm really confident because of the experience and technology know-how. And right now we are actually expanding the team, because we right now we have gain a lot of attention. So people just trying to join our team and also try to provide value with the bounties. So that's overall really, I'm really just pumped and really excited to work with the team. And I think we could build something big over here.
That's great. I mean, and in terms of credentials, you referenced some of them. Obviously, it's so important for anyone going to do their own research to make sure that they're legitimate credentials. What about the mainstream experience pre-crypto? Because some of the things I look for as a researcher is making sure that there are skill sets beyond the blockchain and beyond crypto itself. Do you feel that when we look at the sort of overall skill sets of the parties in the team or the members, that they have that capacity to really lead out all of the other aspects of the business? Because that's what it is, isn't it? It's still a business by design and for profit.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as I mentioned, our founder Yan Wen, he's a serial entrepreneur, and before he founded Perpetual Protocol, he actually developed a financial app for derivatives. So he's actually quite familiar with futures trading, because Perpetual Country is essentially a futures without expiry dates. And on the other hand, because our investors are CNS Holdings and Binance and FTX, so those those people are really know what they are doing, and we actually have a really good contact with them. So we exchange new ideas and know the development of the industry. And sometimes if we have questions, we can ask for them, because what essentially what we're building here is a decentralized version of them, right? So
Exactly.
they are actually quite knowledgeable.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned some big names in there, and respectfully, they're crypto related, but you mentioned FTX. Sam doesn't like to lose. He's a very serious player in this game. And also you mentioned Binance. Now, when it comes to liquidity, when it comes to power, when it comes to clout, when it comes to just infrastructure, they both have a great deal. And certainly they have a strong footing in the industry. What's it like working with them? And what does it mean to have them by your side as supporters?
Yeah, they are really important, as in sometimes whenever we need to make a decision, we will ask their opinion. So despite Yanwen has experience in the futures, because but it's still in the traditional finance world, right? So when we develop the system, we check a lot of system design on FTX, and whenever we made a decision, we actually check with CS Holdings investors, because they manage a lot of funds. They do a lot of arbitraging. So that's why when we build system, we have technology know-how. We could check with guys in FTX or Binance. And whenever we want to deal with user experience or settings, we could check with guys in CAS Holdings. So that's essentially they actually take care of different parts, and they are really beneficial to our development of the protocol.
And it's great to hear, again, not to BS in this interview, because I'm not invested. I just love hearing this stuff. It's great to know that the people that you're involved with in terms of the backers are actually doing stuff with you for the long term. I keep saying that this is going to be the big change for 2021 and beyond. The long-term narrative is going to be more than a narrative. It's going to be a requirement. So did you demand that as a team of your backers, that they would be able to prove, not just say, that they would be with you that long term? And how did you do that? How did you decide who were the ones to trust and would be able to have that capacity to be supportive of you as you're building this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think just give audience a little bit of background. So when we raise from those investors, it's actually during COVID time. So it was really, really, really hard for our founders to raise funds. He literally has spoke to every VC he has come with in this space. And in the end, those are investors who are willing to trust us to put fund in us, because despite Yanwen, our founders has started a lot of company, a lot of them isn't really like billions of assets. So it really takes courage for those investors to willing to put fund inside our team. So that's the first thing. It's about timing, and also they're willing to bet on a team with founders without really billions of assets. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is actually quite evident, because right now we will unlock investors token once per quarter. And right now, most of them, if not all, just hold their tokens right now.
I'm so glad to hear this. Now, let's dig deep. You're really transparent, so we can have some fun. Now, how do you go about assessing this in terms of the blockchain? Do you have access to those investors so you can monitor that? And you mentioned something important, is that vesting schedule is relatively fast moving in that they're unlocking, but they're not selling or dumping. Now, how did you do that? Because there's a big difference between legit and shit in every instance, in every aspect of every corner of business, whether it's crypto or not. And some will talk and talk and talk before they give you the money, saying beautiful things to make you smile, and then they dump later. So how did you do something different? How did you make sure that you were working with teams that did hodl for the long term, like you've said they are?
Yeah, actually, so back in last year during the fundraising time, we actually have to do some due diligence to the investor, because fundraising is actually a two-way street. You need to know the fund, to know the company that is going to invest you. They're going to know who you are as a team, right? So at that time, we actually check how legit the company is, what kind of teams they have back, what's their performance, did they just dump their token once they release their token? Those kind of criteria we have before approaching every one of them.
Awesome.
So that's the first. Yeah.
So you had a blacklist and I guess a green light list
Yeah, kind of. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
I really respect that. Now, let's discuss this a bit more. Now, who were, in your opinion, the standout backers in that experience that you as a team had that really gave you that key feedback, proved that they were doing the due diligence, and then eventually went and backed with that capital support? Who were the ones that you felt stood out as legitimate and leading the space, especially when it comes to things like DeFi and finance? Would it be FTX as one of them? I mean, I'm not trying to shield Sam, but who stood out for you in among those backers, or were they all just standing out in different ways?
To us, multiple coin capital is actually helps us a lot. We actually maybe it's because they are the lead investor of our round, but we actually talk to them the most, and they always give us a good suggestion, and also have some really experience. Like, hey, sometimes we tell them we're going to do A, and they will share with their experience, like, oh, we previous portfolio have do A and it's not going to work, and here's the reason why.
So was that multiple coin capital, did you say, or was that multi-coin? Yep. Just want to make sure I hear you correctly.
Yeah, Multicoin Capital.
Multicoin. Okay, yeah. So that's Kyle and the team.
Exactly. Yeah,
right.
Really
yeah. And that's good to know, because whenever I can hear it from you, that's coming from you to every one of us. We're bypassing all of the, I guess, the people who can suggest whether or not they're. I mean, many people have comments about the quality of different VCs, as you know, but we can't necessarily know what it's really like unless we hear it from the source. So I really appreciate hearing these things, because right now we're all trying to make sure we do our due diligence on who are those VCs and hedge funds that are really there for the long term for the industry. So sounds like you've really done well in securing the funds. How much did you raise, and what essentially were the funds allocated for?
I believe it's $1.8 million US. And it's like 6 months ago, so I kind of forgot.
Well, it's good to know it's not a lot. So you weren't greedy with the amount of money you raised, and it was in COVID times.
No, we want to stay nimble and just keep improving. Yep.
Good to know. So your runway, do you feel like you've got enough in securing those funds to keep building in your roadmap? Yeah,
we believe so.
Okay, so have you set up a system, or have you set up a roadmap to make sure that you don't over budget, or you don't bring in too many people, so that you can be viable for the long term?
Yep, and actually, in the following weeks we're going to release a transparency report on how much money we spend and what is the purpose of it, so that community know, hey, we are not going to spend their money or invest their money just fool around. Now we are serious about what we are doing, and we're trying to stay lean and try to provide value to the token holders and investors. So the report should be out in the following weeks.
Fantastic. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the token design with Perp. One of the things I've learned, I'm possibly going to be an advisor for a startup that I really believe in. And I've been learning that the lead investor has a lot of reciprocal discussion. They're a really important part of raising with the team. Now, how did you go about that with Multicoin Capital, for example, since they were leading? Did they facilitate, and what was the final terms of that, the token metrics and tokenomics? What made you decide on them, for example, and sort of what was the key focus in those discussions?
Well, so...
I mean, you can't tell us everything, so I appreciate that, but what you can tell us.
Yep. Right now, most of all of the investors got the price is 0.08 USDC per token. And that's including C investor, which is Binance Lab, and also the strategic investor, which is FTX, Multicoin Capital, and a lot of VCs and angels.
So one price for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes it fair. I don't think the public like it when there are all these different prices for different parties.
Yep. And well, because I'm not personally involved with fundraising, but it's really iterative process, because sometimes they're trying to figure out the best price, and sometimes for us, we want to find partners that can support us in the long term. So some of the VC will just fail to have an agreement, but the remaining ones just really supportive but the price, we are really open about the price. So some of the community members are really concerned about, hey, they got 0.08 USDC, are they going to dump on us? Well, so far, I don't think, I think most of them, they just still.
And you will have dumpers, in any financial market, whether that be, Wall Street or here, but it's good to know that you're aware that the majority are not. Now, are you as a team monitoring that? How do you know that they're not?
We as team don't really actively monitor this, but actually our community members monitor.
They do. Good.
Yeah. So one of our investors, one of our investors dumped their token, and some of our key community members were like, "Oh, now how they can do this?" But most of the investors still hold their token because they are long-term believers.
Got it. Now, in that context, I wanted to ask you, why did you not extend that vesting so it was several years? Was there a reason? Was it because you wanted to create, price discovery rapidly or have liquidity fast? What was the reasoning for the vesting schedule that was relatively short?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first one is the timing was really bad. It was during COVID, and at that time, DeFi isn't as hot as right now. People are thinking, well, it's DeFi, so how could the trend be so bad? But it was during COVID, and at that time, Uniswap didn't generate as much as volume as it does today. So it's really hard for us to have bargaining power to talk with VCs. And at the same time, despite Yong has a serial entrepreneur experience, as just mentioned, but he did some billions of assets. So sometimes it's really hard to convince a longer term commitment. But having said that, most of the investors, I believe they still are long-term believer because it's during COVID. They could just skip us and to invest in other things.
And do you feel also as well, Weiting, that they would risk their reputation if they didn't hold? Because now more people, like you said, in the community are checking, researching, investigating. So do you think that there's more pressure to make sure that there is that long-term internal support from the investors? Because in 2017, we didn't see that as common practice. It just wasn't. And we still see today, obviously, pump and dump crews, teams, syndicates, pools. But as you're saying, that the top tier of investors, they tend to be hodlers.
Yeah, I believe so. Because as the maturization of the industry, reputation will become more important in this industry. So I believe as time goes by, those who are reputable will just become more precious. They could get a higher deal, a better deal. So that's why part of the reason why we chose those VCs, because we actually did our homework. So I believe.
Well, I'm really happy for you, mate. Congratulations on securing people you trust and work with. It's not easy to do in crypto. Now, with regard to the token, obviously it's moving up. The reality is it's been popular. There's speculators, and there's also users really enjoying the benefits of the blockchain and benefits of crypto. But you mentioned staking before. So obviously that's a reward there's rewards built into that for the users, or for the stakers rather. So do you think that's compounding the price appreciation, the price value? Because there's so many different aspects. So I would imagine to why this price is moving up. You have all the volume happening, you have all the users, but you also have the stakers and you have the speculators.
Yeah, I believe so. So there is actually a flywheel image on our documentation. Basically, it illustrates as more trading behavior happen on our protocol, there will be more fees to the stakers. And if there are more stakers to join the platform, the higher the price of the token will be. And some of the new staker will become traders, which they will generate more transaction volume. And on top of all of this, whenever we launch a new market, we could potentially attract more users. So it's like the flywheel on steroids. So as more market is added to a protocol, or as more trading activity happens on a protocol and more stakers join our protocol, the protocol just become much more valuable.
Fantastic. Well, with regard to obviously there's an asset that is the Perp token. It kind of reflects the entire technology that you offer and the platform. But in terms of plan, concise, deliverable components that you pen down as a team, in the roadmap, can you tell us a couple of things that you are excited about that perhaps you didn't want to tell us, until this interview? Things that we know are coming that we can also, as participants in the community, get excited about that are, things that you would only know in your team.
Yep. So one of the most exciting feature to us is the private market creation. So basically, right now, when in order to launch your market, we're going to go through a governance process where people are going to vote with their Perp token, right? But we believe that within this year, people could actually create markets and run the market themselves and get a cut on the transaction fee happening on that market. So it's similar to Uniswap liquidity provider for a pair. So in this year, people could actually run a market for derivative on the protocol and get a cut on transaction fee. And that process is permissionless. Anyone could run a market if they believe the token could just generate a lot of transaction fee. And besides that, part of the transaction will go to the Perpetual DAO, which is the stakers stake on the protocol itself. So as more people just create markets and run the private markets, more fee will go to the staker DAO, which a Perpetual DAO, which is the stakers who stake their token on the protocol level. We believe that this kind of democratization and permissionless nature will just explore the market. We hope that after introduction of these features, we could do what Uniswap does to the spot market. We could be the Uniswap, but for perpetual markets.
Wow, and just imagine that when you consider the performance of Uniswap, and now you see the likes of SushiSwap as well, or SushiSwap really coming forth as a big player in the space, and Sam's backing that, as you know. So you have, with FTX as a backer, a strong understanding of the imperative of this kind of new offering, a new product that you've sort of hinted at. When is that likely, do you think, to start to come on board, given that you don't like to release things until they're properly ready?
Yeah, but we believe it will be before June this year.
Okay, so you guys are moving really fast. Does it surprise you how quickly you've had traction? I mean, it doesn't surprise me now listening to you, to be honest, but I've always been watching since I was researching Perpetual Protocol before you came out, because I made sure I was researching what the VCs were looking at. And you probably knew that. But now that you have come out of the blocks and you've had all this traction, what's the response been like? What's the sentiment been like in the team? Are they excited that there's all this hype, or do they kind of want the hype to slow down as you're building?
Yeah, people are kind of excited, and really we didn't expect this kind of volume generated. So actually, in the first few weeks, when I doing I crunched some number and seeing the volume, I was like, wait, did I just accidentally add a couple zero in the end? How is that the millions of, like hundreds of millions of US dollar trading volume? So the team is kind of blown away by the response. But at the same time, that actually motivates us to work harder, because right now it's a virtual AM, right? So by default, we only support market order. So those sophisticated traders were like, hey, where's the limit order, stop loss order, those advanced things. So with this current quote unquote success, actually motivate people to build harder, to build those new features. And besides those features required by the traders, we also think further, like the private market creation, because we don't want to just satisfy the status quo, because limit orders, stop loss orders, those are just existing in the traditional world, right? But those kind of private market creation isn't really possible before us. So we really hope that right now the team just really pump and just trying really hard to build new things, and we hope we'll keep going this way. And
it sounds like you're constantly iterating in the team itself, and the fact that you are in an environment and in a country that is blockchain supportive, and also legislation-wise very supportive. I mean, that's one of the things I think that a lot of people do look at now, and the fact that, especially in the derivative market, where there's a lot of constraints in some parts of the world. We saw the likes even in the UK or in the US, but you really are perhaps leading the way in showcasing what can be done when you do have so much support and a reduction in all of the rigorous laws and the overzealous laws that do exist in some of these places to stifle innovation. You have the opposite good fortune being in Singapore. Now, in regards to other partnerships, I noticed in the literature that you have forged others other than Chainlink. We mentioned before about Color Protocol, Nexus Mutual. Then there was another one, by Economy. I think that's how you pronounce it. Are there others that you as well? And in that context, whether it be previous partners or future partners, again, not to hype, but to understand what real partnership means to you, or what partnership itself means to you, and what's coming.
Yep. So real partnership means to us is we could provide value to both of the protocol. So not just for marketing purpose. The criteria for us to choose a partner is they need to be good at what they are doing, and they are reputable, because there are a lot of not so legit teams in this little space.
There's a huge number of not so legit teams.
Yeah, so going to work with the legit teams and build hard. We want to make this a standard, a legit things that people to recognize. This is what we are building here is not really just funny business. Besides the existing partners, we actually have a Bounties set up for people to build on the protocol. So besides those kind of company or protocol partnership, we also welcome new contributors from the whole ecosystem. So right now we have Gitcoin rewards for Bounties and a lot of Bounties for people to just participate in the ecosystem. And there are a lot of new initiatives going on. A lot of new things coming in the following months.
And you can't tell me yet, but I can sense that. Right. Okay. Well, you heard it from Weiting, one of the key members of the team. Stuff is coming forth. We're excited about that. We don't know what it is. Now, you recently released the 1 month recap. Quite a lot involved, actually, considering you haven't been out for so long. What are the things that you're most proud of what you've achieved in this since launch?
I think the one of the most important personally is, this actually is a one chart for gas fee we paid on behalf of the traders. And because all of things are xDai, so the overall amount we pay for gas fee for trader is like $150 worth of xDai.
Awesome.
Yeah, and to me, that's important the reason why it's important to me is because we provide the seamless user experience to the traders, so they could just connect a wallet and deposit and start trading without knowing that the whole thing is decentralized and happening on xDai. So the number just illustrates like how much money we save for gas fee, and how much the user experience we created for those kind of traders, because they are willing to trade over here. Hence, we pay the transaction fee on behalf.
And what you said is so interesting for the mainstream user who perhaps doesn't know about the loud narratives we hear in crypto about DeFi. And what I mean by that is that obviously DeFi is exciting and decentralization's a very key aspect to what we all stand for in crypto. But if you're a user and you just want a seamless experience, and you can bypass the narrative and just get to the benefits of the use of your platform. Now, if you're fast, if you're cheap, and you're allowing for all these new innovations and platform products, people are going to move there and not necessarily know anything about DeFi, but reap the benefits of it. So kudos to you, because again, you're really reinvigorating the imperative of utility in terms of use, in terms of actually building something that people will use for real adoption, as opposed to a lot of the speculative instruments we see, which are just short-term pump and dumps by a lot of really dodgy characters in the space. There's, hopefully more and more of the likes of Perpetual Protocol and others that are focusing on the long-term and real and viable, business models that can continue. And thus, we look towards those investors to support that. So it's great to hear. Now, in terms of social media, in terms of access to information, in terms of contacting members of the team, what's the best way for anyone to properly do this? Not get to the parties that just want to shill me the narrative, but actually get in to understand if I want to be a dev and I want to talk to someone in the team, or if I want to understand more of the biz side of it, the operations. How can I do that?
Yeah, Discord is the best way to do this, because we have a lot of different kind of channel for developers, traders. So the best way to get involved with protocol is join our Discord channel, and we are quite active on Twitter. So you could just follow us and message us, and we'll get back to you really soon.
Now, in terms of pros and cons, I mean, you've been so forthright and I really appreciate that. What are some of the challenges or the negatives that you've experienced? Because not everything's rosy. There's challenges right from the beginning with the raise, and you would have encountered that. But what's some of the downsides you've experienced to crypto, or what's some of the things you'd like to tell us that are important for transparency along the way as you've been building? Any tough stuff that you've encountered, even just the challenges of trying to avoid all of the speculation?
Yeah, I think it's, well, because I also spend a lot of time on community moderation. So sometimes when the price, like back to 3 months ago, it was the lowest point of our Perp token. The price of Perp token was its lowest point.
Right.
And people just say, oh, you are scam, or you didn't create anything valuable. You know, you just feel wrong, you know, because the protocol was supposed to launch in September, and we have built a lot of innovation in the process, and people just say, oh, the price is low, you guys are scared, are you trying to rock us or something?
Right.
And right now we are doing really good, and people just start complaining. And to me, it just seems that just sometimes you just feel really sad, and I feel bad for our developers because they're working really hard, and sometimes
also the price, as you know, doesn't correlate with all of the innovation that's happening because of speculative pressure. But what's great to know now is that there's an alignment between all of the work you're doing, and that's reflecting in the progress or the success of the token itself, which is great because that also should directly correlate with all of the things we talked about today, which is the user and through the fee structure, and then also the stakers. That's direct correlations. So kudos to you in terms of trying to build something that's logical and it can progress. But going back to those, those comments and those negative sort of inferences that things should just be up. Now, how did you kind of get through that tough time? Was it just a case of head down, bum up, build, keep going because you knew that things eventually would come forth for you?
Yeah, well, because we really believe that actions speak louder than token price. Eventually, token price will reflect on how much effort, how much improvement we have done, right? So despite having so much criticism at that time, we just keep building. But I would say some of the community members just gave a lot of support at that time because people just say scanner and those kind of stuff.
Well, let's focus on the good guys. Who were they? Who were the ones that if you want to give a shout out, go for it, because I think they need to be recognized rather than those that are trying to just make these outlandish claims because they're investors or because they're speculators that own the token.
Yeah, there are a lot of early members such as Badu on our Discord channel. They just keep being really positive and give us a lot of feedbacks in the early days. And sometimes people just say, oh, I'm going to sell my token, and it's not hopeless. They're just trying to convince them that the team is actually shipping new things and things will turn around. So really appreciate every one of them.
Fantastic. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is marketing. Having been in crypto for such a long time and knowing some of the internal systems and people and even networks and groups, marketing is really important. And I'm much more of a realist than I've ever been in terms of understanding the imperative of that. Are you engaging in marketing teams directly, or are you allowing the community to do their own thing and let that be more like a natural progression because of the speculative aspects and the natural interest that people have in the success of Perpetual Protocol if they have invested their time, money, and energy into the protocol?
Yeah. To me, marketing always derive from the product. The first thing is to make marketing works is we need to have a unique offering that solve real needs, that achieve things that cannot be done before. Because prior to joining Perpetual Protocol, I actually worked for a centralized exchange in Bangkok, and it's called Gold Exchange. And it was a sister company of ONG Network.
Right.
So at that time, we spent millions of dollars developing the platform and marketing, and we piggyback on the popularity of ONG Network. But there's just no trading volume because there's no differentiator we had. And that's why we think all the marketing start from building a unique things. Then we could gradually grow from there.
I love the idea. So it's got to be real from the beginning. It's got to have the right team in tech, and then ideally, the marketing picks up by default, even because people start to see this is real, and because it's crypto, because there's a token attached to this. The speculative arm of crypto love it. They just go, wow, this is real. You know, I want to promote this. So my attitude is, hopefully it's aligned with yours, is shilling is okay if the tech and team are real. You know, at the end of the day, if you want to promote something that's really proving itself for the long term, by all means do it, I say, because promotion's okay. But obviously there's the other side of crypto when people promote things that are not. And that's, you know, that's another story for another time. So do you feel like the marketing's been organic, not led internally, but actually just happening because of what you do?
Yeah, I would say right now we are trying to market more, because despite we have a really good product right now, because as we could judge from the trading value, we still want to let more people to know about us. So, you know, reaching people in speaking different languages, and, you know, making the user interface better, and trying to engage more with the community in other DeFi projects. So those are the things we're going to do. And prior to a couple months ago, because at that time we didn't launch yet, so that's why we didn't do those kind of marketing things. But right now, I think the protocol is live, so we could do more about those things. But back to the core of those marketing events, a unique product is a must for us, because that's how I make people care. So people just try to promote besides the team's efforts.
Right, and fundamentally, users get a benefit, not just those early backers at the beginning, and that's the big difference. Now, one of the things I commend you on is you've done competitions, you've done programs, done grants, and you've done those bounties. They're all part of that strategy internally to really sort of garner more support and attention. I wish you all the best on those. I'm sure that they'll be successful. Now, one of the things I've also noticed is that, and you've referenced this, a lot of media has also started to pay attention to you, like by the likes of ETHub with Anthony Sassano, The Block, Chico Crypto even, who does do some research and goes into some detail, Spencer Noon. Many DeFi parties have been noticing you. Now, I wondered when I looked at that list initially, I thought, are some of these guys just early angels? Are some of these just early investors? But many of them are not. You could tell based on the backers. So what are your thoughts on those who are really picking this up? Do you think this is just the beginning? Is there going to be a lot more, do you think, of just this organic media support?
Yeah, I believe those are just organic media support, because to be honest, they are not investors of us. And we believe that if we continue to build valuable things, the people are going to use, and we try to improve the development of this ecosystem, keep contributing value back to the ecosystem, people will care. So that's why I think fundamentally product is always the key differentiator of our protocol, and that's our core belief.
Absolutely. Well, this has been the first interview for me for 2021, and I'm glad I chose you, to be honest. Again, for all those wondering, I'm not invested. I certainly will be considering it. I can tell you right now. And for the reason, obviously, of the tech team and the real value of a token. That's really big for me this year. I want to make sure I'm investing myself into things that can be proven to have utility and benefit for users. Once again, Weiting Chen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your transparency. Thanks for allowing me to ask pretty much anything and have no prep for that. Is there anything you'd like to say to the community, to all of the Perpetual Protocol community and the broader community, anything as a final statement?
Yeah, so people could try out the protocol on Perp.exchange, and if you want to know more, please check Perp.fi. And we are really active on Twitter, so you could check us with Perp Protocol. So that's all.
Thank you so much for your time. I'll put all the links in for you waiting below so that people can access that information. But once again, on behalf of all the crypto community who want to focus on research and also on startups that are really moving and shaking in areas of real utility, thank you for discussing every aspect of your new startup. Congratulations on the success and the volume thus far. And I wish you all the very best with your team to keep building and showcasing what this industry can legitimately do when we bring this tech to the fore. Thanks again.
Thank you. Nice to be here.